Welcome. I'm Johnny Ross, your host for the event. Welcome to the virtual networking event by Women in Healthcare. Today, we're going to have a panel with Q&As. Please do ask questions throughout, and we're going to end with a networking session. So first of all, let me introduce you to our chair, which is Angie Khupe. She's a business growth specialist, founder of Healthcare Business School, and she also founded Women in Healthcare, very much passionate about women in healthcare. In fact, Angie's mum was a nurse way before COVID. She was helping put women in healthcare together by doing networking and coffee mornings, and of course now doing online events. So let's introduce some of our panelists. So we've got Claire Buck. She was a buyer for a well-known shoe company, but her journey took her to going back to school to learn coaching, emotional intelligence, NLP, and more. She's now owner and award-winning business coach and mentor. For the last 5 years, Claire has worked with hundreds of business founders, CEOs, and executives to build high-performing, emotionally intelligent environments. She works with business owners who are typically very lonely, who with no one to talk to or bounce off. Claire has 2 teenage daughters at home and so still needs to be a mum. We've got Kate Goldring, business development manager for director, for Leeds Mind. Leeds Mind is a mental health charity with over 10 years experience within the third sector. Kate has been successful in winning 6-figure bids and developing high-level partnerships whilst maintaining a positive work-life balance. Leeds Mind is an award-winning local charity that supports anyone affected by mental health difficulties. In fact, its turnover is 3 million and they employ over 90 staff. Kate's background is fundraising, income generation, in the health and social care, and she's worked for hospices, learning disabilities, and children with cancer. Karrie Brazaski is a homeschooling mum of 1. She's in Arizona right now, in the US, nice and warm and sunny, I believe. Founder of Helping Healthcare Heroes, which is an emerging non-profit in the US, but soon to be global, to give tools and help professionals and first responders so they don't burn out, to ensure that the local communities get the help they need. And if that's not done, there's huge detrimental effects. Karrie's also a nurse of 30 years, and following a burnout, she has a for-profit business helping organizations create retention strategies. So please do enjoy the session, ask questions, and I'd like to introduce Angie Khupe, our chair, and please enjoy the event.
For the lovely introduction, and I'm excited, and thanks to everyone who's actually dedicated their time today to come and network. We are in a very challenging period, and we hope that this event will make a difference, the first of its kind in terms of the virtual networking. We've been doing it in the past few years in a more like face-to-face basis, and we're so excited, and we hope you will be able to get some support from or get some maybe responses or lovely tips from the panelists. So we've got Claire Bucks, and we've got Kate, then we've got Karrie, and we've got Jane. So I will maybe start by asking Karrie, who is a retired nurse, to give us maybe a few tips in general, because obviously Karrie's coming from a place where, as a nurse, she had her own challenges, but now more than ever, we've got more like really higher levels of burnout and higher level of stress levels in this sector. So over to you, Karrie.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here and just welcome the opportunity to encourage people to take care of themselves. I think that is probably the biggest thing. Kate probably will echo it, is that we put our own personal care at the bottom of the list. And if we're in healthcare, we are notorious for taking care of everybody else. But my number one tip, that if you take nothing away from me today, it is that you are important and that you have to start taking care of you. If you are in healthcare, you know how rough it is. Even before the pandemic, people were at rates of PTSD and burnout. I mean, PTSD in the nursing profession is anywhere from 26 to 45%. And we know that as little as 30% of people are engaged right now. So the stress and the burnout is really rough. And I think the number one thing that people overlook is sleep. Getting a good night's sleep. They think that sleep is kind of that thing that I'll do at the end of the day. Well, sleep is as important as eating right and exercising. And I like to say it's even a little bit more. And quite frankly, it's easier to do. And so it's getting sleep and making sleep a priority, so that you can take care of yourself and be there for others.
Okay, thank you for that, Karrie. I'll pass the mic back to Johnny. So we also got Johnny's camera is off. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but we've got Claire as well, who is also my business coach. Thank you very much, Claire, for joining. My question to Claire is also like a life coach in terms of, so like, who also does look after people, like, when it comes to self-care, and will also support people when it comes to things like the emotional intelligence, one of the biggest challenges that we struggle with. So I'm going to pass on the mic to Claire, I had to give us a tip of the day along those lines of like how to cope in this challenging time, again in line with self-care and self-love.
Okay. Hi, Angie. Hi, everybody. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me to be on the panel, and I'm really excited to be here. I think I see lots of different people, not particularly in the healthcare environment, but business owners, and people are people, and they take their problems with them wherever they go. And I think I totally support, what Karrie said. Self-care is the number one thing, and everybody I see is so busy looking after everybody else that they do forget themselves. And that's when they trip up and they burn out. And it did happen to me a long time ago. And it took me quite a while to recover from that. And, I now make sure that I am at the front of the list. Well, most of the time I try. I've got quite a large family, so I try and manage them. But the tip is to kind of journal and write 3 things down a day, just words that mean something to you, so that you can start to understand and connect with what you're feeling, because we don't always acknowledge how we're feeling, and we do need to acknowledge, and we do need to learn, and we do need to reflect on what's gone on during our day, during our week, before we can actually pick ourselves up and move forward. So I think that would be my number one tip, is to really journal and reflect, if that answers your question, Angie.
Thank you, Claire. I'm going to pass the next question to Kate. Kate, coming from the background of mental health, and which is again a charitable organization that deals with quite a lot of like mental health. So we get quite a lot of that among ourselves as healthcare professionals. Here is $1 million question for you, Kate. As a healthcare professional, if I am having to sit in a room and be expected to deliver a service where I'm caring for somebody who's suffering from mental health, somebody who's depressed, when I myself am already I could be potentially be going through the same thing, what's your tip on mental health, please?
Okay, well, just to say thank you for having me, first of all. And also to be clear that I'm not a healthcare professional. My capacity has been very much around income generation. I've been around the voluntary sector for a lot of years, too many to mention really, but in the mental health field for the last few years. And the big thing for me that's tripped me up quite a few times is role modeling the behaviours that we expect people to adopt themselves. I am so guilty of being the person that's working at silly o'clock and my team receiving emails, not looking after myself properly, yet preaching in environments like this about how we should all really look after ourselves. Karrie, the sleep thing, Claire, the journaling thing, all amazing tips. One of the things that I did recently that really reminded me of this was we're delivering a programme with a university locally, Leeds Beckett's University, which I actually used to go to. They've renamed it. It's that long ago that I attended there. But we're delivering some sessions with students there, which at the moment hugely poignant, you know, the stresses that are on students and the uncertainty around how they're accessing education. So I sat in on one of the sessions that my team was delivering, just because there was no one else really to do it at the time. We were short of people, and I thought, oh, it'll be good to get close to it. The best 2 hours I have spent in years, honestly, just reminded me of so many of the things that I should be doing, that I should be role modeling these behaviors with my team, with my family, with everyone around me, in practicing that self-care and really looking after yourself. So for me, it's all about practicing what we preach.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Easily said than done. I'm guilty of charge because I'm always like one of those people who will read, who will listen to podcasts, but when it comes to the VA, to kind of like putting that into practice. So thanks for that tip, really. And I hope we've got something that we're taking from these panelists today. So please feel free to put on to use the chat box and throw in your questions. We've got the lovely panelists, really great experience that they'll respond to your questions. So I've got another question for Karrie, or maybe I'll just throw into Jane. If Jane's got maybe anything that she wants to kind of add on to what the guys have said, just maybe just something, just a comment or anything else. But before I pass on the next question to Karrie.
Can I just add to that? I put it in the chat. I think along Kate's, it's not only modeling it, but it's actually have the conversation. Don't be afraid to talk to people. You know, if you have if somebody's had a heart attack, we ask them, how did the cardiologist appointment go? We say, you know, are you getting out? Are you doing things? We're not afraid to ask them about that. But somebody has depression or whatever, and we think like, oh, don't talk about it. Oh, you know, it's kind of like our moms when they're like, she has cancer. You know, we whisper about it. Like if we whisper, it's going to go away. We need to be open about it. And sometimes just asking people, are they okay? And being open to allow them the freedom to dump. Not to, I don't like to just complain, but sometimes they just need to feel they're not alone or that they've been heard. And so you can be a very good friend by just being there and being of support and listening. Sometimes, you know, when people start, I ask the question, do you want me to listen or do you want me to come up with solutions? Because sometimes you just want to dump it and be done with it, and then you can move on. And other times you're like, no, I really need some help. And if you're not in that, I want some help, the last thing you want is somebody trying to fix it. You just want to be heard. And so have the compassion and the courage to have the conversation.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so how can we then, in the workplace, we've got lovely delegates here on the platform who might be really in that situation, and then having to put that brave face because you don't want to be judged. I personally had a challenge from our team where I've learned quite a lot about mental health. So how can we support each other as colleagues during that time? How do you look out for those signs, or how can what's the best approach? Because it's hard to approach my boss, to say to my boss, oh, I'm going through this mental health. I can easily be judged when it comes to how I perform. You know, that's the biggest nightmare. So maybe I can throw this question to Claire, that Claire, I could be in a workplace and feeling, okay, I'm struggling. Have to wear this brave face. But if I'm to tell the manager or tell my colleagues, I could be judged in case something goes wrong. I end up maybe kind of doing something not really performing well. So what's your...
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I'm not a psychotherapist, but through emotional intelligence, I do know that, you know, being self-aware is really important, and having awareness of others is super important too. I mean, there are 6 behaviors in the wheel of emotional intelligence, and self-awareness and awareness of others are, you know, really critical. And they're innate abilities that we all have. We all are human beings, and we all have friends, and we all have family. And reaching out to somebody in a professional capacity, even if you're at work with them, It's still somebody that you're working with every day. They're still a colleague. And, you know, it's not something that people can rightly share with other people. But if you tell somebody in confidence that you're struggling with a particular issue, then it will probably be passed to the correct person to deal with that. But it takes a brave person to open up. But once you start to open up, then more good will come from that. So holding it inside doesn't mean that it goes away. It just means that you put it to the bottom of the pile, but it festers away and it does come and bite you. So you got to be able to feel comfortable. And I would say as well that, you know, one of our innate fears as human beings is that we have this fear of being judged. Really? Who cares? Who cares? You know, if somebody reached out to me and said, I needed help, they need help. So I'd like to think that I'd be able to have that 5 minutes or take that time, whatever it is, to listen to them. As you said, Karrie, they want to be heard. They want to feel that somebody's actually understood them. And just that 5 minutes of your time, if someone comes to you or if you go to someone, it's invaluable, invaluable.
Isn't it awful though, in this day and age, that we're having to talk about, is it okay to say that I'm struggling with my mental health? You know, this is one of the big things that we talk about all the time at Leeds Minds, reducing the stigma. And mine nationally, you know, the more we're running a fundraising campaign at the moment, but we know that fundraising is one thing. Of course, we need the money, the voluntary sector is really struggling. But the other thing is that we're working with people who will just start talking about mental health as a result. You know, before all this happened with the pandemic, we were 1 in 4 people were struggling with their mental health across England and Wales. And now I think it's 50% are as a result of the pandemic. In Yorkshire and the Humber, where I am, we're at 60%. You know, it's unbelievable, the increase. Yet still, there's no parity between physical health and mental health. It just strikes me as ridiculous that we have to have this conversation, but it does exist. You know, there's a reason why we're having it, but I just find it outrageous that we have to be having it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you very much for your contribution, boss. So I'm just gonna it's one of those things that is it like we tend to like try and get some we need approval to kind of like to be able to talk about mental health, something which like not really something that we might want to learn from, to kind of move away from that mindset and understand that it's okay to not just not be to feel not okay. And with that said, I just started with the questions, but I've got like I just want to go back to the topic of what she really brought us today, which is a lovely topic, which was agreed on as being the first topic for the launch, which is embracing the good, plan to thrive in 2021, adapt and grow. I started by throwing those questions because I felt that these are more of challenges, if you like. We've all had like a really tough 2 years, in the past last year and this year, and now being on like in the 2021 where we've got more hope. I hope that most things are gonna go. We hope that most of the challenges are gonna go with the vaccine, all that. Now, with that said, 2020 also has been a really challenging, but some people really can say that they could really reflect and have actually seen the good from that year. That's why we came up with the topic, embracing the good. So then also the thriving of the 2021, what sort of plans do we have to, what strategies do we have that we're gonna use to adapt, and what do we have in place to grow? So I'm gonna ask the panelists maybe to give us their contribution on the topic. I'll start by going straight on to Kate and say, Kate, what would you like to share with us on the topic on reflecting on 2020? What sort of good things can we embrace, maybe from your own personal experience or from the whole big and huge challenge that we have, the whole world is put on standstill? What have you actually embraced from that? And with that said, what's the 2021 try to grow? Any tips?
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. 2020, I mean, what a year. It's hard to sort of embrace the positive when you first think about it, but actually as an organization and you know across the world, I think we've all just shown how well we can adapt really quickly, you know, from doing everything face to face to going online. I mean, would this have happened a year ago? I certainly have never been invited to anything like this prior to the pandemic. So, you know, there's some really positive things that have come out of it. For us professionally, we made the decision really early on, when a lot of other charities were going out with big fundraising appeals, that we were going to say, no, actually, you know, where we need to be is telling people that we're still here and that we can support, and that our services are here and ready to react and be there over the next 12 months and beyond. I don't think we realized that it would be 12 months and beyond at that point. So how we've adapted and how we've still been able to support people, I think as my organisation, but also I've seen it across the UK, I've seen it globally, is a hugely positive thing. I think technology often gets a bad rap, but we've seen it in action at its best in a lot of ways over the 12 months. Personally, I think the thing I'll really take out of the last year is appreciating the simple things. If you told me that I had to stay at home for a year, I probably would have run a mile previously. But I'm very fortunate that I'm in a nice home with my husband and my 8-year-old, who, as much as he brings me a lot of joy, can be a huge challenge at the same time. But we've begun to appreciate the simple things, which might be getting a pizza and playing Trivial Pursuit on a Saturday night. So the simplicity of things, I think, is something that we really need to keep that and try to keep hold of it. In terms of next year, I think as an organisation, we have to react to the growing mental health challenges that we face. But we're in the final year of our strategy, and we're absolutely dedicated to finishing that. And one of the exciting things we've got coming up that, you know, I'm really excited to try and secure some funding against is services for children and young people. There's a massive growing need in mental health for children and young people, and it's a really exciting opportunity for us to be able to provide that support, not just because children and young people are struggling now, but in terms of preventing some of these challenges moving forward in mental health. So, you know, getting that as part of the conversation that we talked about before, and supporting people now at a young age, hopefully will have a big impact in preventing crisis in the future. So lots of things to look forward to, and obviously we're at the point where there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I've seen some daffodils today, which, you know, is just the most exciting thing ever. So
okay, thank you very much, Kate. I've got a question then. I'm going to throw another question to Claire. So you're coaching there. So with the impact of the pandemic, Claire, in 2020, how did you adapt your approach to enable your business to grow and to thrive? What really worked well for you, which maybe you could potentially share with us? That would be something that we could also take on board.
Good question, Angie. I think when I look back at 2020, what's my word to take away? I think adaptability. I think things have changed and moved so quickly. And I think if you're an industry that's still alive, and I know that the healthcare is, but I'm talking about all the, you know, the terrible job losses that have gone on, and the industry sectors where, you know, like the travel industry and the creative and the arts and so many different industries just fell off a cliff. And I think if you're on the other side of that, where you've actually been able to sustain a business and grow a business through 2020, you're in the minority, and well done you. So when the pandemic first hit, my business fell off a cliff. You know, every client that I had was really panicked, couldn't see a way forward, regardless of the industry, and everyone was just totally focused on the pandemic. But slowly and surely, you know, little things have happened where they've repositioned, slightly changed what they're doing, maneuvered themselves online more if they were offline, and found different ways of communicating. I.e., somebody, I think Kate said today, to be involved in something like this is quite amazing. And they're just finding adaptable new ways where they can adapt their creativity and the talents that they have to do something really good for the world. And being in contact with other human beings is something that's really good for the world. And you know, and I look at my teenagers, and I used to dread my 13-year-old. My kid used to be on the PlayStation. I used to go, get up, go out, play football. I don't care what you do. There's no one to play football with now. So what do I say? Play on your own, go kick a football on your own. It's really hard, especially for the kids. And we're talking about mental health for kids. I've seen how, my son particularly really struggled going from being at school to being completely cut from his friends. Thank goodness they're allowed to meet one friend at a time now. So I think that's a really good bonus for them, just to have an outlet that's not family, and then all the babies that have been on the pandemic and the baby classes that aren't there, there's just so impact on every level. And I think anything that we can do to be connected with other people in any way is a really positive thing.
Okay, thanks for that, Claire. So then I'll pass the mic to Karrie. Karrie, who knows the mental health care struggle after working for decades in the sector, and also struggled with, so you actually personally struggled with the actual burnout during your time. So my question to you is, how do you plan to adapt in 2020? What are your priorities, for example? Or maybe if you could maybe reach out to your younger self, what advice would you give the younger self? And then moving that onto the way you plan to adapt in 2021.
So for me, I think the big thing, it kind of goes back to that whole self-care. I think a lot of people it depends on the sector of healthcare that you work. Some of you have still had to get up and go into the hospital every day or into hospices and this and that. But there's a large portion of people who they didn't have the commute anymore. And I think for me, has really been cherishing those moments with their families. Unfortunately, I had a dad who died during the pandemic and was in the hospital for 21 days where no one was able to go in and visit him, and he was dementia. So it's not like you could just call him. Like he didn't even know how to answer the telephone. And what I realized is how important our communication is, how precious our loved ones are. We know that, but when we're faced with the inability to be there next to them, it makes every moment precious. We kind of talked about it in the green room today. I was a homeschooler before the pandemic. So I already had planned that and chose it. And I love that when we're able, we can pack up our family and go. I don't have to work it around school events. And people who are now being forced to school in their home is not homeschooling. It's a whole different dynamic that they have, but it's cherish those moments. Cherish the breakfast with your kids that you might not have had time for before. It's creating some wellness and self-care activities that your kids now see. Like my son now, he didn't really pay attention a whole lot, but he sees when I take time out for meditation. He sees that we'll have lunch together, and then maybe I'll do a qigong or something in the afternoon just to relax. And it's modeling behaviors and enjoying those little moments with our families, because you just never know. You never know when that last hug, that last goodbye is really the last one. And so I say cherish those. And going into 2021, I think it's embracing the ability to reconnect with people, taking the opportunities to network, get on live events like this. Who would have thought, I'm sitting almost, a quarter of the world away from you all, and it's morning and I'm having coffee and you guys are ready for afternoon toddies, but we can communicate and we can share, because the one thing that this pandemic has brought is we're all in the same spot. It doesn't matter how the pandemic is, the coronavirus is hitting Leeds or London or Toronto or me in Arizona. It's the same. We all are facing the same thing. And it's almost like it's created this commonality that globally we can connect in, I hate to say in like common suffering, but we're all in the same boat. And so to be able to support one another, to lift each other up, I think is an amazing opportunity and kind of that silver lining in a really ugly time. And so, I encourage people to, even if it's just a telephone call, reach out to people that you care about. Have a coffee with somebody that you used to be able to meet face to face, but now do it over Zoom. And we get Zoom fatigued, but at the same time, use technology to help you. I mean, it's amazing when you can, have a birthday party and, around the world, and everybody's there and celebrating and joyful. Is it the same? No, but make the best of it, because it could be a whole lot worse.
Wow, thanks for that, Karrie. Thank you so much. Yes, we've got some notes to take with us, from these panelists. Very wealthy support there, wealthy advice, and great tips there. So I'm going to pass the mic back to Kate. So Kate, so in terms of like the best techniques that you might want to share with us in developing a strong network. So we've got Women in Healthcare. We've just recently launched this virtual networking today, which we hope to be running every monthly basis. But what other tips can you really share with us, or say what's the best techniques in developing a strong networking, and how important it's to have a network around you? Because we spoke about mental health, and it seems like a really huge thing, especially in the sector among the healthcare professionals. So what tips would you share with us?
Yeah, I think a network is so hugely important, both personally and professionally. I mean, professionally, I've built up quite a network over the years, I suppose. There's always an ongoing joke at work that I seem to know someone everywhere. And I think that's probably a result of the fact that I just love people. That's the main thing. And one of the things I've learned over the years is to be yourself professionally. It's all right to be authentic and to be kind to people. If you're both of these things, you tend to collect people along the way, and they'll stick with you. And I think that is so important. You can be a manager and still be yourself. You can be a dedicated worker and still be a great mom. There's all these things that you can be both of these things, and that's being your authentic self really helps you to build that network over the years. Personally, Jane, who's organised this, has heard this story before, but I have my girls, my sort of almost lifelong friends from teenage years, and our WhatsApp chat is my therapy, really. When there's something that you just need to say, but it's not appropriate to say it at work, they're my go-to. I've probably had 6 or 7 messages from these girls just in the time that I've been chatting on here, with one of them who's just had a baby and is stuck underneath him because he's asleep and she can't move, and the toddler's causing chaos in the kitchen. These are the things that we share, and it's life, and having that network and the opportunity to share that with people that you either care about or love, or respect professionally, is so important. So yeah, be true to yourself, be kind. I think they're the things that I'd take out of that.
I like the part where you say be kind to yourself, and just the saying goes, like, whatever you give to the universe, that's what you receive. I really like that part, and thanks for sharing that. Claire, a question for you. Kind of, who is your network? Carrying out from what Kate has just shared, who in your network really inspires you and spurs you on to reach the greater heights? You mentioned earlier on that your family is your backbone, but what about within your network? Who pushes you to?
I actually have got the same thing as Kate. I've got I'm originally from London, so I've got my really close girlfriends from London that I grew up with, and I've got a really close set of girlfriends in Leeds that I'm in constant contact with, and I can put anything in any of those groups when I need help or I need support or I need advice, and we chat about the conversations are quite ridiculous sometimes, but it makes me laugh, makes me giggle, keeps me, you know, relevant. And one of my friends in London, she's a psychotherapist, and I've known her since I was born. Our families are friends, and she was determined through the pandemic to set something up to help kids in London that their families are in need, and they just don't have the money for everyday stuff like soap, shampoo, toiletries, things like that. So she got in contact with a lot of different schools, and there's kind of like this group which we're kind of part of, and all these mums came flying into the frame. Yep, I can shop in Aldi, I can find the cheapest sausages and beans here, I can find that. Everyone's donating money, people are shopping, people are packing bags, and I think they've delivered something like 5,000 bags now, and they've set up a Facebook page. And this is all because my friend really wanted to do something to help these kids that just can't afford to have everyday stuff, and they put packets of biscuits in and sweets, and it's kind of expanded like crazy. But she's been my inspiration because she was so determined and she's done so brilliantly well. So yeah, that's her.
There you go, everyone. So it looks like we need to keep those childhood friends, those the other friends within the network. We need that support. I just want to also give a welcome and a shout out to my childhood friend who's also joined. I've known Tembi since the age of 12. We're still close. And hi, Tembi, and welcome. Thanks for joining. So thanks for joining to everyone, to everyone here. So I've got some questions which I'll be reading from the chat room, which I'll be directing to. So if anyone's got a question for the panel, please feel free to just punch it in. Dora, she says, I'm an independent occupational therapist with 17 years of experience. Thank you, Dora, for sharing your profession. And I'm just going to be picking questions. Karrie says, in addition, don't be afraid to have discussions about well-being. So I'm not sure if you want to add on to that, Karrie, onto the well-being part before I come to, I think there was a question from Johnny as well.
Well, it was in response to Kate talking about the mental health. Sometimes, like we say, we want to get the stigma away from mental health. And so I like to kind of back up a little bit. I am a nurse, and I have addressed people's mental health issues in that health environment. But if we take a step back and we really start talking about mental well-being, then it encompasses our whole life, and it doesn't feel so clinical, and it doesn't feel like somebody needs a diagnosis, in that we just really start talking about what is it for you to be whole as an individual? What brings you joy? What brings, your whole being forward? And it encompasses taking care of your personal health, your mental health, to have mental well-being. And so that was just my point. In sometimes it's easier to talk about mental well-being, and to me it's much more encompassing. And we all have mental health issues, whether it's positive or negative. We all have mental health, just like we all have a heart. We all have cardiac health. But when we talk about mental well-being, I think it's taking a little bit of the stigma out and really talking about the whole function that we have within us.
Okay. Thanks for that, Karrie. Thank you very much. Since you mentioned mental health, I'm going to quickly throw a question before I go back to the chat room. Another question for Claire. When do we tell, what signs should we look out for? I know you didn't expect, but it may be coming from the self-care side of things. Which signs should we really look out for, and when should we really accept that something is not right? Because at times we tend to want to be to play along and pretend to be strong, to be juggling family and profession.
I'm not qualified to answer the question because I'm not a psychotherapist. But as a coach, I think when people come to me, it's because they're not feeling happy, and they don't always know why they're not feeling happy. And it takes a lot of digging, and we have to get through a lot of layers to actually really get to the core of what the issue is. But you know when you're feeling happy, as Karrie says, we all have feelings, whether they be positive or negative. So we do know when we're not feeling happy, and we know whether it's something that's been with us for a long time, and whether we want to really dig deep and go into healing, or whether we want to understand it and move through it. So I guess that's the sign. When you're feeling happy, you're good to go. And when there's something that's feeling not quite right, or you're a little out of kilter and it's hard to find that smile, then it's time to kind of start asking questions of yourself.
Okay, thanks for that, Claire. Because of time.
Can I add to that, Angie?
Yes, please. Go on.
So I will say, as a nurse, and kind of having done stress and burnout work now for quite some time, this is what I share with people. When you are having a trouble getting to sleep at night, or you wake up unfulfilled and not rested, when you start getting sick all of the time, you used to be healthy and now you get every common cold that walks by. You're exhausted all the time. You no longer, as Claire said, find joy in your life, or there's specific things in your life that you absolutely dread and try to avoid. You can see it in your coworkers. The other thing is when you start missing deadlines, when you really have to push yourself to do everything. Nothing is in flow. Those are very real signs that you are getting onto the brink of burnout. And so a lot of that we just ignore. I'm stressed. Well, I've got a lot going on. Yes, I called it the chronic going to the doctor, and you don't get a diagnosis, but you feel like crap. Just because you don't have a diagnosis doesn't mean you are well. It just means I can't figure out what's going on. And so those are some great times for you to step back and really start looking at reducing your stress, creating some balance in your life, putting a focus on sleep, and really start looking at what can you do and what can you manage to make you feel better.
Wow.
As you can tell, it's a soapbox of mine. Sorry, I won't go on anything.
Thank you so much.
It's highly unlikely. I totally thought it was really insightful, but I just would like to say that it's highly unlikely when you get to that stage that you're going to be able to unravel that on your own, and that seeking help is absolutely the best thing that you could do.
Reaching out is just so important, especially at the moment during the pandemic. I think we can't. The NHS is so stretched. We're going to part and go to networking on anything. I think it's that. Make sure you ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists. So I don't know if you want to give them a round of applause before we pass on to Johnny, who's going to then be taking us into our private rooms for networking. So over to
interesting. What I wanted to do was bring Angie back in, if that's all right. And Angie, what if you want to just take your microphone off, just in the last few minutes. One of the things that you've set up is the Facebook group. And I just wanted you to tell us what your thoughts behind that were, and what you're hoping, what your vision for that Facebook group is. I'm going to share the link in the chat if people want to join. But Angie, do you want to tell people more about that Facebook group?
Okay, thanks, Jenny. So the Facebook group is a networking platform which is used really by women in the sector, and the whole idea or the vision behind the group is for us to have this time, to have a space where we can really come on and vent as healthcare professionals and share some ideas, share some tips, share some visions, and have like a platform. We've done a few kind of like some lives before where people can feel free to share some challenges, and I don't even like calling them challenges, or maybe to share, maybe if you're experiencing even there's things like bullying in workplaces, how do you deal with those? So you can come to the platform, no one judges you, because if you try and do that at work, you might even get judged at times. So when you come into the platform, you're speaking to the like-minded people. So that's the whole idea. If you've got any tips in personal development, again, that's the whole purpose of the platform. If you've got your own things, maybe your own other things that you want to come and share or you want to promote, again, it's an open platform, which we hope that if any one of you is not on the platform, to kindly join the platform, and also while you're on the platform to contribute and also to share some tips and ideas and to really start some conversations.
Brilliant. Thanks, Angie. So just to tell you a couple more things. So as I said, the Facebook group is in the chat. Please feel free to join there. There is another event going to be happening in March. We've not set the date yet, but you'll get an email because you registered to this. You'll get an email to tell you more. One of the things that I'm going to ask the panelists a quick final question, if that's okay. And the other thing that I want to do is share a feedback form. So one of the things that Angie really wants to do is get feedback to help understand how we can make these events even better and feed into the sort of thing that you're wanting. So if you click that link on the feedback form, then you don't need to fill it out now, but maybe if you click the link now, you'll be able to fill that out afterwards, just to give Angie some really good feedback on what you thought and how she could grow this and evolve this. So just to finish on a final question for the panelists, what I think it would be nice to know is sort of what's the takeaway? What one or two things would you say people should take away with them? And what would be the little nugget that you would suggest? And maybe we'll start with Claire. So just to put Claire on the spot, if that's okay. So what and you might need to unmute yourself. So what would you suggest, Claire?
You muted me. You always have me to speak. The little nugget is to be kind to yourself and to keep your channel open and your ears open and be there for people around you and to chat. I think that's my nugget. That's my takeaway today, that everybody wants to talk, everybody wants to share. Brilliant.
And we'll go to Kate next. So Kate, what would be your takeaway?
Echoing a lot of what Claire said, to be honest, but I think we sort of covered some of it just before we went into breakout rooms, is making sure that you reach out for support. I think a lot of people, there was some research done by Mind saying that a lot of people felt that their needs weren't sufficient enough to reach out for support, or they were going to waste someone's time. You won't waste someone's time, whether it's reaching out to family, whether it's reaching out to a medical professional or a charity like mine. I think it's really important that we make sure we do that. That's my takeaway.
Great. And Karrie, you just need to unmute yourself. It wasn't me that muted you, it was Zoom, so I apologize. So Karrie, what would be your takeaway?
I think the biggest is to find, we've talked a lot about mental well-being and our mental health, but I think the biggest is to find those little things that bring joy and focus on those. We sometimes, we kind of got there at the beginning of this where we kind of went to the struggles, but really if we're going to thrive, we have to focus more on the positive, because I believe the more that we focus on positive, the more we see it in our life. And so just finding, even if it's just in the day, what are those things to be grateful for? The joy, the camaraderie, the communication, find the silver linings.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Angie, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add or say. One of the things that I've just been reminded is that you're all going to receive an email with some free bundles that the panelists have all very kindly put together. So there's lots of resources and lots of I know that there's an event, there's a whole business planning, there's a number of things. You'll get an email about that, totally free of charge. This group is here to support, nothing else. Angie, is there something you want to finally add to wish everyone a good evening and let anyone know anything else?
Well, honestly, just from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you everybody for attending. We really value your time, and to the panelists, thank you so much for the contribution. Johnny forgot to ask me the same question, and what is it that I'm taking with me today is the part of being kind to yourself. We tend to really forget about ourselves and be more like too harsh, and also one of the biggest highlights to me was like looking out for the signs, like when you start missing deadlines, when you start like feeling okay, to really listen, to kind of like go out there and seek some help. So yes, this is what my one take for today. And with that said, I would like to really honestly extend my gratitude to everybody who's attended. And thank you so much. we look forward to seeing you at the next event. I think we've got a date. Jane is able to confirm the date for the next event, I think.
The day we just, in fact, one of our panelists is on with us, Colin Glass, and we're just looking at March the 25th. Is that right, Colin?
So yes.
What we're going to do is, I think it's a really interesting one. We're going to celebrate International Women's Day, and we thought instead of, we know how great women know how great women are, but we thought we would ask males to celebrate women and say how great they are. So we're asking a panel of gentlemen to join us and to talk about the strength of women within the world that we live in.
Brilliant. Well, I think our time is up. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Please do click the link to the survey. Please do click the link to the Facebook group. As I said, if you click the 3 dots quickly before I close the meeting, you can save the chat. Thanks to our panelists, thanks to our chair, Angie, and thanks to you for being here. We'll see you again all soon. Take care and enjoy the rest of your evening or day, wherever you are. Bye.